Good morning, y'all. Welcome to JDB's Morning Cap. Today is Friday, August 21st, 2026. And we know that this show is going to be really exciting. It's going to be packed with excitement. I know I'm happy that this show we'll get to this one here. But there's a lot of things going on here today. But I'm happy that we're just moving forward or press forward to it. But I'm really excited that this is the moment that you're really gonna have. But it give me a second. I'm really excited that this show will continue to go on. Yes. We are deeply excited that this show must go on. So we're about to let's get this thing started. Good here. Let's start with the NFL, but I want to start. It's been a wild week in the NFL practice. So I'll get to that a little bit later, but I'm going to start from last night's preseason game between the Raiders and the Texans in Reliant Stadium in Houston, Texas. The Raiders battled the Houston Texans in the Week 2 in the preseason. Let's see who got the start. So Fernando Mendoza got the start. He played the first half. Fernando Mendoza went 8 for 15 for 86 yards. No touchdowns, 1 sack. He also had 1 pick. The one interception was Wade Woodaz with a 80-yard interception return for a touchdown to make it 14-0. Texans got off to a hot 17-0 start before the Raiders finishing the 22-3 run. Aiden O'Connell finished the second half 15 for 24, 166 yards, and a go-ahead rushing touch and a game-winning rushing touchdown with 12 seconds left in the fourth quarter. And then for the Texans, they played 3 quarterbacks. C.J. Stroud got the start for 1 drive, 4 for 6 for 27 yards. And then Jo'quavious Marks went 4 carries for 37 yards, including a 20-yard rushing touchdown against the Raiders. Davis Mills went 11 for 15, 93 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, 1 sack. Davis Mills played most of the first half after C.J. Stroud sat down the rest of the game in the preseason. And then Brett Ripien played the entire second half. He went 6 for 10 for 44 yards, no touchdowns, two sacks allowed. He threw a pick in the final moments of the game. He was picked off by the safety, Devin Lafayette, the Raiders safety, Devin Lafayette. to seal the Raiders' first preseason win. So the Raiders improved to 1-1 in the preseason. Texans falls to 0-2 in the preseason. That was the final score. The Raiders outgained the Texans in the preseason 400 to 219 as far as total yards. And the Raiders ran for 159 rushing yards in that game as well. And the Raiders defense forced 2 takeaways, a fumble recovery and an interception. The guy who recovered a fumble was Gary Smith III. And Jafari Harvey forced him out. Jafari Harvey for the Raiders forced a fumble. So the Raiders defense. So here's my question. What were the biggest impressions about the Raiders' 2-point victory in a come-from-behind fashion? Well, the Raiders were down 17-0. They were down 20-3. Understandably so. They came back and win 22-20. I mean, we've seen some good things. We talk about Fernando Mendoza, his growth. Fernando Mendoza had thrown 1 pick six in his college career. Last night he threw his first pick six as a pro football quarterback. I mean, technically, the Raiders' offense so far in this preseason has been pretty good so far. The Raiders' defense has been better, especially in the second half. Raiders' defense struggled in the first half, but the Raiders' defense was much better in the second half. They forced 2 turnovers, and they got to the Texans' quarterbacks 3 times. 3 combined sacks. They sacked Davis Mills once, and they sacked Brett Ripien twice. We've seen some guys stepping up. The guys who record right there. Patrick Johnson, former Eagle, he got the sack. Thomas Booker got a sack as well. And Jafari Harvey also had a sack and a forced fumble. But there's nothing you can get credit for the Raiders. They want to compete in their own levels, but it's about developing the development. So you talk about the Raiders in this perspective. Rob Leonard is a defensive coordinator. He spent time with the New York Giants, the Miami Dolphins, and the Baltimore Ravens. So that really specialized themselves for the Las Vegas Raiders. So that would change it out a little bit about that. And then Mike Washington, he went 9 carries for 56 yards. And then you had Dylan Lobby, who had a rushing touchdown. Dare Ogbawale also had a touchdown run as well. So the Raiders' running game expect to improve. But the biggest question mark, the wide receiver position continues to be tested. Benson struggled with Benson. Malik Benson struggled yesterday. He only had one reception for 18 yards and two drops. He dropped two passes yesterday. And this is understandable. The Raiders wide receiver wide receiver roster has not been as sharp. You had several guys don't have much receiving experience. So the receiving core is going to be tested for the Raiders. If you don't have good targets, you're not going to win football games. It's all really matters. But let's move on from that. Let's start with the Houston Texans. Let's talk C.J. Stroud on the first drive. The Texans were moving the ball really well. Texans were moving the ball really well. So for the Houston Texans, combined drives between C.J. Stroud and Davis Mills. When you look at those possessions. The Texans have scored. They have scored a grand total of 2 drives. The first 2 drives were touchdown and field goal, including Texans ran 10 plays, 69 yards, and they took 4 minutes and 54 seconds off the clock on the opening drive, including a 20-yard rushing touchdown by Woody Marks to make it 7-0. And then they didn't get to the second drive until a 6:39 mark in the first quarter. Texans ran 8 plays, 48 yards, 3 minutes and 35 seconds. Davis Mills was at quarterback. It ended up kicking a 51-yard field goal by Cat Fairbairn to make it 17-0. It was after. This is the prior to. It was a 14-0 when Will Daz had a pick 6 against Fernando Mendoza, and then the rest of the game. And then the other drive, Mills said, the Texans ran 10 plays for 52 yards, and time possession went 3 minutes and 1 second, and they end up a field goal. Kyle Fairbairn went 6 yards deeper. He made a 57-yard field goal to make it 20-3. The Texans had scored 3 times in their first 4 possessions, excluding a pick 6. The Texans have scored 3 offensive drives. And they only scored, the offense have produced 13 of the team's 20 points. The other points they scored is what has pick 6. So they scored 3 of the 4 first half possessions, excluding a kneel down in the first half. And then Texans drives the rest of the game. Punt, fumble, punt, 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 interception. So guess how many drives are there? How many punts that Texans that they had in the second half? Punt, 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 punt. Texans had 5 punts in the second half and 2 turnovers, a fumble and an interception. Ripien has surrendered 2 turnovers. He lost a fumble in the third quarter. Then he threw the pick to Lafayette in the final moments of the fourth quarter. Well, should I be worried? No. I'm not worried about it. It's preseason. I'm not going to blame someone on that. But we've just been talking about all this. It's going to take time to be disciplined offensively. I mean, you come off a disaster turnover-filled performance in the AFC division round against the Patriots in a second round loss. I mean, now it's about growth. It's about consistency. So in their last 7 Texans possessions, it's been 5 punts and 2 turnovers. After just 1 punt in the first 4 possessions for the Texans offense. And the Raiders defense pitched a second half shutout. The Raiders outscored the Texans in the second half 19-0. Despite the Raiders backup kicker, Kansei Matsuzawa, he missed 2 extra points. He was 1 for 3 in extra points. Matt Gay is the regular kicker. It looks like he's gonna make this team. Matsuzawa has struggled with extra points. So he's got to get cut by when preseason comes to an end. So we got to make sure we stayed up here. All right, coming up next, it has been a crazy week in the NFL practice. We had several fights breaking out between the Saints and the Cowboys and the Dolphins and the Giants. Which fight was more worse? The Cowboys and Saints practice or the Dolphins and Giants practice? So stick around. Also coming up on JDB's Morning Cap, A.J. Brown refuses to greet against his former team except for one, as the Eagles play the Patriots tomorrow night in Foxborough in a preseason game in week 2. And Baker Mayfield's expectations in 2026 as free agent is looming after this season. We'll talk more about that when we come back. Welcome back to JDB's Morning Cap. And there was a lot of chippiness this week, including the Cowboys and Saints practice. There was a lot of fights. There was a lot of fights between these two teams in practice. The practice, that was a Cowboys facility. It took place in Oxnard, California. That's their Cowboys practice facility. And tempers were absolutely flaring between these two teams. And we've seen a lot of chippiness between these two teams during that practice. There was punches thrown. There were pushing and shoving. There were growling in ear. They were chirping at each other. There was a lot of stuff going on between the Saints and the Cowboys. So that's not all. That is not all. All here. The Giants and Dolphins also got into it, I believe, yesterday. And it's been a wild week in the NFL as far as practice, on-field altercation. We've seen on-field escalation between four different teams in different practice facilities. And we've been through, they've been through this. We've seen on-field altercations. We've seen that time and time again. But we talk about the brawls, the confrontation. We've seen a lot of things not going right. It could lead to severe fines. So the NFL has found out they are fining $1 million for a huge on-field altercation, a brawl. Oh, here on Tuesday, this past Tuesday, the Giants and Dolphins are going to face it the same thing. They're probably going to get heavier fine. So who had an altercation between the Dolphins and Giants, and who was tossed out of the practice? The rookie Abdul Carter, I believe the number 3 pick of this 2026 draft. He altercated with Patrick Paul with the Dolphins. Austin Jackson got into Kevon Thibodeau's. Jermaine Anonor got into Austin Jackson. Then James Winston was involved in a scrum as well during that altercation. So we've seen several of those. And the Cowboys and Saints have been additionally fined $500,000 for a poor maintained sportsmanship and controlled player behavior and negative attitude. So which brawl was worse, Dolphins and Giants or the Saints and the Cowboys? Definitely the Saints and Cowboys. The fight got worse. I mean, we've just been talking about that at here. The chaos. There were 7 to 8 massive brawls. Several punches thrown. The helmets got hurled on. There were some wrestling moves. There was a handful of wrestling moves. Scott Steiner's son, I think he suplexed someone the other day when I saw it. I mean, Roger Goodell has to handle this league better. Should they suspend the players? You're damn right they should suspend someone. You do not know the damn rules. You don't know the rules. You're going to go out here and cuss you out. Donovan Asaraku was ejected from practice at Cowboys linebacker. He threw a punch with the Saints McCoy. Well, we just been talking about it. We talk about every significancy. You're not gonna put yourself at risk, and there's no way in hell you can just get some severe injuries. You hate to go through that. You hate to go through this. I'm sorry. Kellen Moore and Brian Schottenheimer, John Harbaugh, and Jeff Hafley has to know all their policies. And we've just been. I'm not going to accuse that you're not facing a discipline. You broke the law. Sorry, y'all. You guys broke the law. But if you broke the law, you're going to have daddy issues. But it just doesn't really turn out that way because it feels like you're a bit of in a bad spot right now, and we've seen a lot. We've seen a lot of bad things can really happen. It's crazy. You don't have to go through one process to the other. You can take one spot, and that's all you got to get. And as long as you don't face discipline, you don't have to go through the same issues again. And that's that. As for the Dolphins and Giants altercation, as far as I'm concerned, we've seen several more ejections. But talk about in NFL practice, they should bring more security. And I think they've already done that. They've done this a lot. So there's a bunch of securities. That's their job. The security must go outside and inside their practice facilities to make sure there's no altercation. We got to make sure the security has to take care of the players, the coaches, the officials. That's what this league is all about. Or a fan. And to prevent fan conflicts by players or coaches. You can't criticize that. You just can't. You've got to know something. And you want to make sure, you got to make sure everything is cleaned up. And that's what really happens right now. As this is not a good thing for the league when you start altercating each other. I am so sorry. All right, coming up next on JDB's Morning Cap, I'm gonna talk AJ Brown. I'm gonna talk Baker Mayfield as well, and then we'll wrap it up. What's coming up in the next episode on Monday. We'll get to that a little bit later, and I'm gonna do a Major League score around. So I will be back. Welcome back to JDB's Morning Cap. A.J. Brown refuses to greet the rest of the Eagles players. However, A.J. Brown did speak to Jalen Hurts for the first time since the NFC Wild Card Game. So now the Eagles are playing the Patriots in Foxborough tomorrow night for a preseason matchup. There, we'll find out if A.J. Brown is playing tomorrow or not. Maybe. So if A.J. Brown doesn't play tomorrow, then the possible chance he can play is next season, as the Patriots will play the Eagles next year in Philadelphia in the regular season. So that's what the schedule is all about. But now the Patriots and the Eagles, two-time Super Bowl matchup. Each team has won a Super Bowl in each of those matchups. Tom Brady has start both of those. The Eagles quarterbacks were Donovan McNabb and Nick Foles, respectively. I mean, so let me speak about A.J. Brown. Am I surprised that A.J. Brown refuses to greet the rest of the Eagles players? No, I don't think so. It's understandable because I think A.J. Brown just doesn't want to speak any of these players, any of these Eagles players, I should say, except for Jalen Hurts. I mean, that's the point. If you don't want that, then that's a big difference. Because of that, you don't want to do anything with it. And there's no questions asked that you would have set yourself in place. Then Philadelphia will have to take yourself out. And when you want to talk about Jalen Hurts, then this is a different story for you guys. Then you have to learn something else, and not taking several steps back. But if A.J. Brown wants to have a big season with the Patriots, suit yourself. Jalen Hurts, this is going to be a challenging season for you. Hopefully, this Eagles team will get better as this season goes on. But we know A.J. Brown and A.J. Brown connection hasn't been really easy at times. But you're not going to throw in the towel, are you? No. But you got to stay afloat. You got to stay consistent. That's what this is all about. All right, we're going to move on from that. We're going to talk Baker Mayfield now. But before we do that, let's do an LB score round. Let's take a look at the final scores from August 20th. Let me take a look at it, and then we'll look at the standings as well. Final scores from August 20th. The Cardinals beat the Reds 10-9. Cardinals and Reds have combined 10 runs. Cardinals scored 6 in the ninth inning after Myers dropped the ball in left center field in the ninth inning, allowed the Cardinals to score 2 runs, and they end up winning 10-9. Cardinals scored 6 runs in the ninth. Reds scored 4 in the ninth. And so it was an incredible finish in Cincinnati. The Reds took 3 out of 5 in the 5-game series. The Guardians, with a much-needed series win against a lowly San Francisco Giants team, 5-2. Guardians took 2 out of 3 from San Francisco in Cleveland. Blue Jays with an important series win against the Tampa Bay Rays 5-1 in Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay continues to struggle a little bit. The Royals swept the Athletics 6-2 in Kansas City. Royals takes the season series 5-2 against the Athletics. The Braves shuts out the White Sox in a makeup game 2-0. Grant Holmes took the no-hitter through the 7th inning before they lost it in the 7th inning. Brewers hold off the Mariners 7-4 after the Brewers scored 22 runs 2 days ago, just 2 games prior. The Brewers take 2 out of 3 against the Mariners in that series. The Yankees hold off the Orioles 6-1, and they swept the Orioles in Baltimore. Rangers blanks the Nationals 2-0 and takes the series win from Washington. By the way, Jacob deGrom, congratulations on his 2000th career strikeout out for Jacob deGrom. Angels pounce the Astros 18-3, and Angels take 2 out of 3 from Houston. That's your final scores from August 20th. All right, let's talk Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield is set to be free agent after the season, but his offer is a 2-year extension. If he gets his 2-year extension, his contract year begins next season. He will not be a free agent until after the 2028-29 season. So we'll see how that pans out. So here's my question. What is the biggest concern for Baker Mayfield's future as his free agency looms after the season? Right now, for Baker Mayfield, I'm not concerned about Baker Mayfield, but I am a little bit concerned about his contract. But that's understandable. He's not a big-time quarterback player. But he does come through at big moments in close games. He has more game-winning drives. Baker Mayfield has one of the most game-winning drives as a quarterback, along with Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. Who else? Jalen Hurts at times. We've seen several quarterbacks have game-winning drives. Baker Mayfield and Patrick Mahomes are the biggest difference makers. The bigger difference maker is Patrick Mahomes. Baker is a difference maker with his franchise. When I had said that word, the quote says, Baker is a difference maker. That's my quote of the day. Those are the big words I have to say. Baker is a difference maker. I mean, every time this team wins, Baker is a difference maker. That's all that matters, right? You talk about contract constituency. If I'd asked the same question, what would you ask? Would you leave out your contract? Would you take out your contract? But you talk about every way you're gonna ask, then this is not a good spot. But I do know this. I would have took everything that you're supposed to ask for it. Now this contract will only remain the same as anyone. But no one else really deserved it that much. Thanks to that. So we will have to see what's gonna happen in the near future to So that will be the best case scenario that you're going to be talking about. You already see that, and you already made that. You're only gonna. It's only going to get better. You can make something happen, because that's what this is all about. All right, let's wrap it up here. All right, so what's coming up on Monday's JDB's Morning Cap? We'll talk some NFL. We're going to talk more NFL. Oh, by the way, college football is back next week. I'm going to talk some college football. Week 0 starts next week. And then, as a matter of fact, I'm going to preview who's going to be in the college football. I think it's a 12-team format this year. It's a 12-team format this year for the third year in a row. And who's going to be who's going to win the conference? Who's going to be the biggest bubble teams? Who's going to be the biggest sneakers? Can jump into the college football playoff, like as far as group of 5 team. And then I'm going to also pick the Heisman Trophy candidates and who my winner is. And the list goes on and on. So this is going to be the biggest year of all time in college football. Week 0 starts next week, and then week 1 after the next week. So we'll see. Week 1 will start September 3rd. September 3rd, that's when week 1, the college football will start. We'll see a ton of big games coming up in this one here. And also, I'm going to talk more NFL. So we'll keep you updated as soon as possible, as the preseason expects to wrap up next week in the NFL. So get that ready. All right, this is JDB's Morning Cap. Enjoy your day. Take care of yourself.